The late afternoon sky was a dull, bruised gray, hanging heavy over the small mountain town like a blanket about to drop snow. The rain had been steady all day, drumming softly on the roof of Miller's diner, seeping into the cracked asphalt outside, and gathering in long, rippling puddles along the roadside. Inside, the warmth smelled faintly of coffee, frying onions, and freshly baked pie. Only two booths were occupied, a pair of truckers hunched over mugs of black coffee, and an elderly couple quietly sharing a slice of apple pie. Sarah was behind the counter, running a damp cloth over its surface, though it was already spotless. Slow days like this stretched time, making the clock's second hand feel almost taunting in its steady march forward. She was just about to untie her faded apron and head home when the bell above the diner door jingled. It was the kind of sound that usually brought a reflexive smile to her face, but this time her expression shifted into surprise. Standing in the doorway was a boy, maybe 11 or 12, soaked to the bone. His jacket clung to him like a second skin, his jeans were dark with water, and his sneakers squished audibly as he stepped inside. His hair, a messy mop of dark brown, dripped train water onto the checkered floor, but it was his eyes that caught Sarah's attention, wide, tired, and holding a look far older than his years. "You okay there, sweetheart?" she asked gently, her voice warm but cautious. The boy hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. His arms were wrapped tightly around a crumpled brown paper bag, like it held something priceless. He gave the smallest nod but didn't say anything at first. Sarah noticed the faint tremble in his hands. Without pressing for details, she reached behind her and poured hot chocolate into one of the thick ceramic mugs, the kind that stayed warm for a long time. She set it down on the counter in front of him. Here, on the house. Steam curled up into his face, and for a moment, his rigid shoulders softened. He took a small sip, and his lips parted just enough to whisper, "I'm trying to get to my sister." The words came out cracked, like they had been caught in his throat for hours. Sarah leaned in a little, resting her elbows on the counter. "Where's your sister?" she asked softly. "In the hospital," he said, his gaze dropping to the mug. "2 towns over." "I miss the bus. I thought I could walk." His voice faltered, and he clutched the paper bag tighter. "She's a broken bar. She's really sick. I have to give her this." Sarah's eyes flicked to the bag. "What's in there?" The boy hesitated, then carefully opened it just enough for her to see. Inside was a small knitted scarf, uneven, fraying at the edges, the yarn a pale blue color. It was far from perfect, but the kind of imperfect that told you every stitch had been made with care. "I made it for her," he said quietly. "She gets cold in the hospital." Sarah felt a tightness in her throat. She didn't ask where their parents were. She could already guess from the way he'd said "I have to get there" instead of "we." She thought of the weather outside, at the endless rain, the slick roads winding through the mountains, and knew there was no way this boy could make that walk safely. "Come on," she said, grabbing her worn leather coat from the hook by the door. "I'll take you." The boy blinked, startled. "You don't have to." "I know," she interrupted, offering a small smile, "but I want to." They stepped out into the rain, which felt colder now, almost metallic against the skin. Sarah's old blue pickup sat in the corner of the lot, its paint chipped and its headlights slightly dim. The wipers squealed against the windshield as she started the engine. The boy climbed into the passenger seat, holding the paper bag in his lap like a fragile treasure. They drove in silence for the first few miles, the sound of rain tapping against the roof filling the cab. The road twisted and dipped, framed by dark pines whose branches hung low with the weight of water. Sarah glanced at him now and then, noticing how his eyes kept drifting to the scarf. "She's going to love it," Sarah said finally. The boy's lips lifted in the faintest smile. "I hope so." At a small gas station on the edge of town, Sarah pulled in to fill up. The boy stayed in the truck, but she returned with a sandwich, a bottle of water, and a packet of cookies. "Here," she said, handing them over. "Eat something. It's a long ride." He took the food, mumbling a thank you, but only nibbled at the sandwich, too focused on the bag in his lap. Sarah could tell that every minute they spent on the road felt like a battle against time for him. As they drove deeper into the mountains, the rain grew heavier, the world outside their headlights blurring into streaks of gray and black. Sarah kept the conversation gentle. Stories about the diner, About the time a bear had wandered into the parking lot. About the snowstorms that would bury the whole town in winter. Little by little, the boy began to relax. He told her his name was Daniel, and his sister's name was Lily. He'd learned to knit from an old neighbor after school, and he'd spent weeks making the scarf, redoing stitches until it felt just right. By the time they reached the outskirts of the hospital's town, it was nearly dark. The street lights cast long, shimmering reflections on the wet pavement. Sarah parked in front of the small hospital, its entrance glowing under a buzzing fluorescent light. Inside, the smell of antiseptic hit immediately, sharp and cold. A nurse at the front desk looked up in mild surprise at their rain-soaked appearance. Daniel's eyes scanned the board behind her until he found the number he wanted. Without waiting for permission, he bolted down the hallway, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Sarah followed, her footsteps echoing in the sterile quiet. When he reached the door, Daniel paused for a moment, almost as if bracing himself, then pushed it open. Inside, the room was dim except for the steady glow of monitors. A small girl lay in the bed, pale against the white sheets, her hair thin and tied back. Tubes and wires trailed from her arms and chest, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor filling the space. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Danny." Her voice was weak but warm. Daniel hurried to her side, pulling the scarf from the bag. He unfolded it carefully, as if it might unravel if handled too roughly, and wrapped it around her neck. The scarf looked big on her, almost comically so, but she clutched it instantly, her small fingers running over the uneven stitches. "It's warm," she whispered, smiling. Daniel leaned down and murmured something that made her giggle faintly. For a moment, Sarah forgot they were in a hospital. The air in the room seemed lighter, warmer, like the scarf had brought not just heat, but a piece of home. Sarah stayed in the doorway, not wanting to intrude. The nurse came in quietly, glancing at Sarah with a silent question in her eyes. Sarah only nodded. Explanations could wait. Right now, this was more important. After a while, Daniel turned toward her, eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. His voice was steadier now, as though the weight he'd been carrying had finally eased. Sarah gave a small smile. "You take care of her." As she stepped back into the cool night air, the rain still falling in a steady rhythm, she thought about how she had almost gone straight home that evening. How easy it would have been to let him walk back into the storm. But some choices at the quiet, instinctive ones could change more than a single night. The truck's engine rumbled to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. The drive back would be long and lonely, but Sarah didn't mind. She knew she'd carry the memory of that scarf and the look in those children's eyes for the rest of her life. Some acts of kindness were small, almost invisible to the world, but to the people who received them, they were everything.